Alright, let's talk about the perfect wave real quick. A game where you are trying to build the perfect wave and then do tricks while you're riding that perfect wave. So when the game begins, you're going to have some wave cards, you're going to have some trick cards, you're going to have one goal you're trying to accomplish, and then you got two of these wax tokens and your surfer himself, who starts at the far left here closest to the beach. You're going to be riding a wave out toward the right and then trying to surf it all the way back and do tricks as you do that. A wave is going to be a group of cards that goes higher to lower from right to left. So you're riding the larger wave portions to the lower wave portions as you count your surfer back toward that beach at the end of the game. So for instance, a wave could look like this: 11, 9. It counts as if it counts if it's equal, so two nines in a row count as being part of the same wave, and then a 3 counts in the same wave as well because everything's still descending. If, for instance, I had played a 4 here, this 4 would be discarded, not as part of my final perfect wave, and this is what I'd be left with. So that's the real basic mechanics of a wave. At the end of the game, you're trying to get your surfer to be able to be at the far right of one of these waves so that they can ride it all the way back, and you're going to try to have tricks above key parts of that wave that you'll be able to pull off if you do that. So if I had a run of cards, for instance, and I had this trick above one of the numbers in my run, then this trick would score points for me at the end of the game. You'll also score points for the numbers that are underneath each portion of your perfect wave at the end. Again, we're going to look at a final scoring in just a second here that's a little bit better example of this. First, we'll talk about the basic mechanics of the game. The real simple mechanics are that you are going to have 2 action points to spend on each of your turns, and you're going to use those to play cards out for the most part, and then your turn will end and we'll refresh our pier where all the cards come from, and then move on from there. So we've got our pier that has publicly available wave cards and trick cards, as well as paddle out cards, which is how your surfer moves. And then we've got some public goals, only of which a max of 2 will score at the end of the game. Players will have options to activate these goals by putting surfboards underneath them, and once a goal is activated, anybody can score these points, but only if it's one of the goals that's been activated. So we've got our little reference card here. This is going to tell you what you can do on your turn. For one of your 2 action points, you get 2 per turn, you can take a card or play a card. Taking a card means that you can either take a card, either a trick card or a wave card, into your hand, but as part of the same action, you can also just immediately play it out to your board. So if I wanted to, I could take this 2 into my hand, and my hand is private knowledge. This would not be accessible to everybody around the table, same with my tricks and my goal. So I could take it into my hand so that I could plan ahead, or I could immediately play it out onto my board, and everything you play in this game is face down, so it's always going to be private knowledge what you've put down. You can reference what you've put down, but nobody else at the table knows what your wave looks like, basically. You're also always allowed to play cards anywhere you want to, so I could instead have played it here when it comes to playing trick cards. So if I wanted to use my 1 action point to take that card and play it immediately, I could also just take a trick card from my hand as the same thing, or a trick card from the pier, and I could play that for 1 action point as well, but it can go anywhere I want. So maybe I think I'm going to set up a run, and that's where I want to do it. This is a terrible setup I've got going right now, but imagine it's good moves. Also, for 1 action point, you can spend one of your wax tokens. You've got 2 to start the game. You can spend one of those wax tokens to paddle out 1 space. So this is one of the 2 ways to paddle out. Paddling out just means you're going to move this way. And the other way to do it would be to take a trick card called Paddle Out and then play that card. So that's just the only use of those Paddle Out cards. The one thing to note about when you paddle out is that from each time you paddle out, you are only allowed to play cards above or to the right of where your surfer currently is. So you can never play back toward where they were, but you want to keep paddling them out because the farther along they get, the higher points become worth and the better wave you might be able to build them onto. Also, for 2 action points, you can activate a public goal, which is that surfboard thing I talked about, where you activate one of these goals so that people can score it at the end of the game, hopefully you, obviously, and as few other people as possible, or you can just get a new wax token to add to your supply for 2 action points. There's a free action you can use to spend one of your wax tokens to discard all the wave cards and deal new ones, so this would be to replenish the pier supply of wave cards, because you wanted different ones than are showing at the moment. All right, let's move on to our example, because that's the things you can do on your turn, and we've got an example here of the end of the game. Now, these would all have been face down, and what I would have done to start this example scoring before I flipped any of my cards up is that I would have discarded all cards to the right of my surfer, because I can't ride the wave that I haven't gotten to, so those would all go away. Same with the trick cards that are to the right of my surfer. And then one at a time, I would start with the card that was above my surfer, and I would flip them over one at a time until I found one that's not part of my wave. Here's the one that's not part of my wave because it's not part of this descending path. Everything to the left then gets discarded, and I'm left with the wave that I built this game. So my wave is 5 cards long. I immediately score points for each of the numbers that's under one part of my wave. I get all of those, not just the highest one. I get all of them. And then I am going to score for sets and runs. A run is 3 cards next to each other that are consecutive. So that if I still had that 7 and I had gotten one spot further, I would have had the 7, 6, 5 run, but I have no runs at this case. The other thing you can get is to score sets. So I've got a set of 3. It has to get up to at least 3 to count as a set. And you can see on my scorecard here that a set of 3 is worth 30 points. Runs have their scores right there to the on the next bit there. So I score points for here. I score points for sets and runs. I score points for tricks I've pulled off. So if this number is above a set, I score 10 points. So I pulled that off. I planned that correctly. That's 10 more points. If there are no adjacent tricks, I score 20 points. There is an adjacent trick, so this is gone. And if this is above an even number, I score 10 more points. So there you go. 20 more points from those 2 tricks. The last thing you're going to look at is that private goal you are trying to accomplish in your hand. If I reveal a wave card with more odd numbers than any other, or I reveal a wave with more odd numbers than any other player. So I've revealed this as my wave, because remember everything I discarded would have been face down still. I revealed this as my wave. I have got 1, 2, 3, 4 odd numbers. Hopefully that's more than everybody else has, so I can score 50 more points, and that's where the game's going to end.